All information given in this episode is for educational purposes and should not be tried prior to consulting a licensed physician and or certified state or accrediting bodies. We encourage all listeners to research, talk, and make all inquiries to all of the important professionals and governing bodies before acting on any information heard on the De La Fit podcast. Any action taken by any listener is done by and under their own omission and action, whether conscious to the results positive or not.
Tuned in to the De La Fit podcasts, 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health, all in one podcast.
Salutations and proclamations. It is I, it is you, it is us, it is we. Together we make up the digital family that is the De La Fit podcast. I'm your host, Philly's #1 son, aka the Body Alchemist, Sun Moon Bay, bringing you another podcast excursion. Welcome everybody and happy Friday to you. I hope that your week was filled with happiness, health, and progressiveness. We've got a great show for you today. We are going to be continuing our conversation that we started about social distancing about a couple of weeks ago. We had Amanda Webster come on and she gave us some amazing tips and tools about adding mindfulness practices and skills to social distancing to help us better balance this practice to maintain our mental and physical health. Today, we are going to have special guest Thais Gibson with us. She is an author, speaker, and co-creator of the Personal Development School. She comes bearing a plethora of accreditations, such as an MA and over 13 different certifications ranging from CBT to hypnosis. Thais is here specifically and specially because we're going to be adding a special nuance to our conversation of social distancing and bringing up a much left out topic, which is the youth and how they are managing to deal with social distancing and the coronavirus and COVID-19 and the things that they are internalizing, because while we ourselves as adults, we're kind of used to rolling with the punches and dealing with things that life hits us with, we're a little bit more calloused and a little bit more pliable when it comes to forced change. You know what I mean? Maybe not so much, but enough. And the reason I say that is even though children are capable of adapting, it's how they're capable of adapting. As adults, we have a certain amount of fortitude mentally that we're kind of like, okay, as long as we can maintain this, keep this, all right, keep this in checks and balances. Whereas the youth, they're still formulating everything. They're still building who they are and their perception of the world. And it's up to us to help guide them. So I feel that this is going to be a very unique and important show today because we are going to be talking about the tools that the youth need to adapt and progress dealing in these very stressful times. And Thais is going to help us with this. It is a very important discussion that we need to have and that we need to really think about if we are parents, guardians. It makes no difference. It is extremely important. And if you are not a parent or a guardian, if you know somebody with children that can use this information, please share this, because I think this is going to be a very important topic, specifically now and more so in the near future, because for children and teens, as they're learning, it's not necessarily now that we see the impact, but it's years later. And for the future leaders and contributors of society that our children, our youth will be, we need to make sure that they are equipped with the tools necessary. So Thais is here to help us with that. I'm so excited. I'm not going to give a long soliloquy or a monologue today. I just want to get straight into the information. So we're going to bring in the sponsors and let them do their things. And thank you to all our sponsors for helping us specifically in this really hard time. Without the sponsors, we couldn't do what we do. I mean, this is a free program to everybody. So for them to help us bring this information to you, we thank them so much. So let's do the sponsorship thing, and then we're going to come back with our interview with Thais Gibson. All right, let's do it. De La Fit Podcast is sponsored by Mountain Made CBD. Mountain Made is changing the CBD game by offering a line of high-dose CBD tablets at an affordable price. Their products are THC-free and third-party tested for accuracy, cleanliness, and potency. Their products, which ship nationwide, include Build for CBD saturation, Boost for precision titration, Recovery for rest and rehab. With 9 years experience in hemp and fitness, Mountain Made's founders are focused on creating a quality product to help those who live an activated lifestyle. Check out www.mountainmade.life to find out more about how their products can help you crush life. Remember, their products ship nationwide. Go check out their website today and follow them on social media at MNTMADE. I started using Mountain Made's Build CBD tablets to help me with the injury in my elbow. And let me tell you something. Not only is the injury subsided, but now I can do push-ups and I'm back to bench pressing. So I encourage anybody who's interested to look up, check out Mountain Made and all their products. I think you'll be glad you did. What's going on, everybody? It's Philly's #1 son. Listen, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you how to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a stunning podcast in one place. So listen, if you want to be like me and have your own podcast, go to anchor.com. That's anchor.com.
You're now tuned in to the De La Fit Podcast.
Back to the 360 degrees of holistic fitness and health that is the De La Fit Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. I hope you are all feeling good. We're going to continue the conversation we started with mind and body wellness practitioner Amanda Webster about mental health and social distancing, what the implications mentally for all of us, especially those who live with mental health issues, and just how we can all begin, if not already, to practice a well-balanced style of social distancing that will not only help us physically, but mentally. Here with me today to continue this ever-growing conversation and to add to it as well is co-founder of Personal Development School, Miss Thais Gibson. Thais, I hope I nailed that. You know I'm practicing all the time when it comes to pronouncing these names. People, please give me your strength.
You're doing a great job.
Welcome back. For everybody out there, a little bit of some truth. We recorded this, let me not mess this up with a faux pas. We had a great interview last week where I got to talk to Thais, and it flowed so well, and I was so excited that I realized that I never pressed the record button. So this is going to go down as one of the greatest interviews that nobody will ever hear, ever. But we're going to make this even better. Am I right, Thais?
Absolutely. We're ready.
So let's start. Let's tell us a little bit about your fitness journey, your holistic fitness journey, and how you even became or started the school. And before we get into the questions.
Okay, amazing. So basically a little bit about my personal fitness journey. I grew up playing sports, and I got a full ride soccer scholarship to a D1 school, which was pretty exciting, and was sort of diehard into soccer and a whole bunch of other sports, track and all kinds of stuff growing up. And at the same time, I actually, had quite a few sort of childhood traumas that were lingering and unresolved things. And it was interesting for me because it wasn't until I am a huge proponent of like health, wellness, fitness. I work out 5-6 times a week. I'm like really passionate about physical health. But I found for myself personally that there were things going on with me mentally, emotionally, that I wasn't able to fully resolve until I did a really deep dive into the subconscious mind and understanding my own mind and my own patterns and the things I had to sort of transform that I was carrying. And so that really brought me into, a strong relationship with psychology and hypnosis and lots of different things to do with the subconscious. And I did a deep dive there. I did a master's degree in transpersonal psychology and like 13, 14 different certifications or so to learn everything I could about the mind. And that's sort of some of the information that's been condensed and translated, like the best quality things I found. And that's initially what started the journey towards creating the personal development school.
Thais, you also have, I would like to say, a deeper story that goes along with this. Only if you're comfortable to share with the listening audience, dealing with your own personal growth prior to this. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and happy to share. So, it could be a very long story, but I'll try to condense it a little bit. Basically, I had a lot of chaos at home growing up, a lot of sort of challenges in the home space. And I was really motivated to get a soccer scholarship and leave the country and sort of break free and do my own thing. And, I have wonderful parents, but they just had a lot of challenges sort of between them and how that sort of spilled out into the family dynamic. And so long story short, I had to have knee surgery at 14, turning 15 years old. And after the surgery, I got addicted to my painkillers. And there was somebody a year older than me who was a lacrosse player that I knew, and she said, when you're healing and you're trying to recover and make it to a scholarship in time, painkillers are great performance enhancers. And I was like, I'm going to do anything I need to do. And so I think the combination of having unresolved traumas and actually kind of enjoying the feeling of the numbness that I got to carry with me through taking those, and then the added sort of proposed value that they're performance enhancers. And, meanwhile, this individual is the one who was supplying me with them as well, long-term, or at least long-term back all the way in high school. And I think the combination of those two things created this like really addictive pattern for me. So I actually struggled with addiction, a whole bunch of different things that I was doing, but that was sort of the number one. And did inpatient rehab, outpatient rehab. Later into my years, I still was playing soccer at the beginning, but in my third year, I had to take some time off and then return to school later on and sort of this whole thing. But long story short, went through a lot struggling with addiction. It's probably one of the most challenging things I think a person can go through if it's, really, really strong and it has a stronghold. And I felt like I was kind of in this war with myself all the time. And so inpatient rehab wasn't a thing for me. It didn't work so great. Outpatient, same thing. And things weren't working until I finally learned about the subconscious mind. And it wasn't until I understood that war with myself that I was experiencing was actually the war between my conscious mind wanting to stop being addicted and my subconscious mind getting value out of the addiction, getting value out of things that were covering the pain. And the subconscious mind will always win against the conscious mind long term. And so it's not until it wasn't until I understood the power and the value of learning to reprogram your subconscious and understand it and the principles that it lives by and the rules it plays by and how to sort of hack that I was actually able to transform my relationship to addiction. And so as somebody who was, sort of had a bit of an addictive personality, I guess the next thing I got addicted to was like spirituality and personal growth. And I was meditating regularly and just doing such a deep dive into that area. And as I brought my life into a really strong balance, it was sort of like, oh my goodness, everybody needs to learn about this. Everybody needs to understand that they can change their habits. They can change the things that they don't like, that they're stuck on, the addictions, the challenges that they're facing, anger, whatever it is. If we learn to understand its source in the subconscious and target that at the root level, anything is changeable. And so that really led me towards, I started working in practice with clients. I went back to school, did all the education stuff, started working in practice with clients and started teaching workshops, and everything just grew very, very quickly for me, which was sort of brought to the decision point, like how do we help more people when I'm not able to serve everybody time-wise? Like there just isn't enough time in a day or a week. And so that led to the creation of courses and teaching principles, and now we have our online personal development school, and I have an amazing business partner in that, and it's been an amazing journey so far.
I was looking at your website. Basically, these are the classes that we didn't get in. I'm going to take it as far back to high school going into college. A lot of things that could have been used. It's to me, and I'm a big nerd, so it kind of reminds me of the old Shaolin Temple Kung Fu movies in a sense. This is where you can go in and learn a lot about mindfulness, and kind of it gives you tools and tips and work to help yourself with yourself. So I appreciate what it is that you're doing. Let's get into this. So the media, all right, we know what's going on out there. I mean, I don't know how many days. Some people are actually counting down the days. I saw somebody say day 268, and I'm like, really?
Oh, wow.
Are we really doing this?
Wow.
This is for everybody listening. I know this is serious, 100%. But at the same time, are we really going to this point where we're counting the days like that? I mean, to me, that coupled with the media has a huge effect on how we process and relate to our emotions and what's going on. What's the best way that we can remain in control of ourselves and balance the negative thoughts that's going on, as well as kind of have a filter to filter out those negative thoughts? Because if not carefully checked, this can lead to panic, which can lead to other issues as well. So what is the best way for us to develop those two aspects?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I think that one of the big challenges that the subconscious mind is designed for your survival, and it's running 95 to 97% of your life, your decisions, your feelings, your thought processes, all these different aspects. And so, if you're naturally wired as a human being to focus on the worst case scenarios, then we have to sort of take some of that power back, because that might be great if we're actually living in like a survival oriented society where we have to hunt for food and like seek shelter every night. But when we at least have a roof over our head and, we're in a relatively civilized society, then it can really destroy our mental health and emotional well-being. So I think one of the first things we want to be able to do is try to practice using our conscious mind to really check in with all those subconscious thoughts that are running throughout the day. And one of the best things we can do is notice that your emotions are a feedback mechanism. They are always guiding you. And when we learn to recognize that, like, hey, this is actually a support system for me, and they're letting me know whenever something is out of alignment inside of my internal reality, then we can use our emotions as this amazing tool instead of be used by our emotions. And so if we have this opportunity to go, okay, I feel bad. What was I just thinking about? What have I been ruminating about? And then really source those things. What we're actually doing is we're using our emotions to bring the subconscious, those sort of autopilot thoughts that are running, that are always eliciting little emotional responses throughout the day. We are using that and making those thoughts conscious, and then we can work with them and question them. So if we're sitting, for example, and we're like, you watch the news and you're like, oh my gosh, I have no control in my life. This is the worst thing ever. When is this chaos going to end? It's never ending. When we can actually realize, okay, I don't feel so good. What was I just thinking about? And we can realize that we're thinking for maybe the last 20 minutes about how out of control our lives are. We can question that and we can be like, okay, can I really truly know that my life is completely out of control? Because your brain loves to think in these one-sided perceptions. It thinks in absolutes. And so, you see yourself in that movie in your mind, being completely out of control and helpless, and you're feeling accordingly. And then if we can just really source it and look, okay, where do I have control? Are there still some places that I do have control? Do I still have a roof over my head? Is the government trying to work to support different things right now in some form, potentially? Do I have friends and family and connections and people I can reach out to? When we can look intentionally using our conscious mind and create conscious thoughts to sort of counteract that like all or nothing type of thinking that our subconscious mind is doing, that's always looking at these worst case scenarios, then we can actually take power back and control back over our emotional state. And also over the decisions we make. Like, it's really hard to get your needs met when you're just sitting ruminating about all these terrible things. It's a lot easier to get your needs met when you're conscious and being able to recognize, okay, what do I need to feel better right now? What is causing me pain? And how can I action something so I can make a difference in my day-to-day life? And that's a really big first step, because then we don't just get lost and sort of enslaved by our thinking process all the time.
The media. You just broke that down with what we can do. Now, how would the younger generation deal with this? This is something that hasn't really been talked about, but the younger generation is definitely, of course, internalizing this a lot. Their world has been essentially turned upside down. I mean, their everyday of what they used to know of going to school, being extremely social, even after school, possibly going to the mall or doing whatever, has changed. Social media is, of course, one of the lifelines that even before all this, they were all stuck to. I mean, even my young niece, she's about 5 years old. She knows how to use her own little cell phone, and she loves YouTube to the nth degree. How do they process this? How do we help them deal with these situations?
It's a great question. I think one of the most important things we can all do, but especially that age range, is we have to understand and really get clear and isolate what needs are missing from our lives as we go through these changes. So, in order to solve an emotional problem, you always have to isolate what that problem is first. And I think that's where a lot of people sort of get stuck, because they don't necessarily realize, hey, emotions are solvable problems. They're feedback mechanisms. They're supporting us so that we can understand what's going on beneath the surface. And so if you can isolate as a young teenager, even young adults, if you can just isolate, okay, what needs are unmet in my life right now? And then what are some creative ways I can find to get these needs met? You do not have to be as affected by the situation, because really what the situation is affecting is it's taking away your needs in different ways. It's taking away that connection need, that social need. And so sometimes we have to be creative, and we have to, jump on Zoom calls with friends or family members. We have to, connect with people over the internet a little more, still face to face in some way. We have to have deeper conversations, get more vulnerable in our conversations, find ways to compensate for the lack of needs that are being met in the form that we're used to. But we always have a way to get our needs met if we're just willing to explore the different forms that can take. So that's what I would really advise. If you're struggling and you're feeling, lack of control, you're feeling isolated, you're feeling all these different things, you have to come up with a plan for yourself to action those needs, to clarify what other needs are unmet along with those, and to come up with strategies to actually support yourself in those specific areas.
For a person that's dealing with depression, anxiety, PTSD, or any other type of mental illness, what sort of steps do you think that they should take as well? Are these similar tactics that they should add into their normal lives with the social distancing that we're practicing, or is it somewhat different?
It's a great question. So there's a lot of similarities. I think one of the biggest things we want to understand as human beings is that there are two things that cause negative emotional output, and only really two things on the emotional level.
Hey everyone, we hope that you're enjoying the interview thus far. We'd just like to take some quick time out to remind everybody to like, follow, share, and subscribe. With every like, follow, share, and subscription, it helps the De La Fit podcast to grow. And the more we grow, the more information we can bring to you, the listener. So please Take some time out, like, follow, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Really two things on the emotional level, and those are unmet needs and then the painful stories we tell ourselves when our needs go unmet. So if you can recognize, okay, these are my unmet needs, and then you can change the way you're thinking about the situation. So like, let's just say, for example, that you have this lack of control in your life because your lifestyle's changed and you didn't ask for that change, right? So you have this lack of control. And then you tell the story around it that life is terrible, I'm trapped, I'm stuck, I'm helpless, and you're ruminating over those thoughts. You have to change both. You have to isolate the need. Okay, I need to find a way to get more control back over my life. Maybe you make a schedule. Maybe you try to be intentional with your time. Maybe you decide what you can do that will empower you or inspire you during this whole process. And you try to take things away consciously so that you have some sort of feeling of control. So you try to get the need met, and then the next thing you really have to target is changing your thinking about it, right? So you want to really stay away from that story of, I'm completely helpless, I'm completely trapped. You want to be like, you know what? There are people, in all fairness, in developing countries, for example, that, they may not have access to even properly socially isolate, right? So we're so lucky from one perspective, by the fact that we can stay home and we can separate, we can stop the spread of what's going on, and we have some control in that situation, and we have access to, more food and resources and different things. And so try to remember what you do have as well, and try to shift your perspective to think of thoughts that are empowering, because all of your thoughts are creating an emotional output. And that, if we have patterns of negative thoughts, that's patterns of negative emotions and patterns of negative neurochemicals as a result. And so it's something we really want to be clear about and take our power back around. But it's always going to boil down to the needs that are met or unmet in your life and what you can do about it, and the way you think about your situation and how you can change that consciously.
You said needs. How do we begin to identify what truly is a need and what is a want? Something that I think most of us here in the United States and the Western world, I need these shoes, I need that bag, I need that money, I need this. How do we begin to clearly, concisely start to understand what is truly a need? Because I think this is also taking the positive out of a negative situation, a chance to learn and educate ourselves about ourselves. So how do we do that?
Yeah, I love that question. So this is based off of some of Tony Robbins' work, but there's a lot of research from other areas that support this. And we have our 6 basic human needs that things are sort of coming off of, right? So those needs are, we have a certain degree of need for certainty or safety, okay? Then we have a need for uncertainty, or more like novelty, variety, exploration. You can think of it that way. So certainty, uncertainty, growth, which is, this is a great opportunity to get growth in creative ways. Significance, if people are curious about what significance has to do with, significance is a lot to do with like personal importance. And you can think of it too as like sometimes significance can be our spiritual connection, or the connection we have to just things that are valuable in our lives, feeling like we matter and we're meaningful. And then, so we've got certainty, uncertainty, we've got growth, significance, and then we also have love and connection, which is obviously the biggest one, and contribution. So when we look at love and connection, obviously this is something that's going to be challenged the most right now. And then when we have contribution, it's like how we can give back to the world. So all of your basic human needs are going to come off of this, are going to be sort of offshoots of this. But then we also have our desires, right? And this is where you can make the distinction. Is this something that I need that relates back to one of those 6 basic things that I'm wired for at a subconscious level and I'm sort of designed around to a certain degree for evolutionary purposes? Or is this a desire, like, oh, I really want that pair of shoes? And just making that distinction helps you focus on the things that are actually going to feed your deeper self a lot more. So if you're getting caught in those like attachments, those, the shoes or the material things, that may not be as valuable to you in terms of what it gives you back. It might only give you a certain degree of you get that short-term like little gratification moment, and then long-term it may not be of service to you, right? You forget about the shoes in a week or two, or you adjust to the excitement of them. And then long-term, what's really going to sort of feed you at a deeper level are am I lining up strategies for myself around these 6 basic human needs? So check in with yourself. Like, I advise, if people are interested, like, sit down with a pen and paper and be like, okay, certainty in my life, uncertainty or novelty, variety, significance, growth, love, connection, and contribution. What are strategies I can create to support these things for myself? And I would really do a deep dive in that area.
So in a sense, developing some core principles of value.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent. I love that. Let's go back to the youth. As a parent and or guardian, what should we be aware of and be paying close attention to when it comes to our youth dealing with this current situation?
I think one of the toughest things is because if you look at behavioral development, teenagers have an extensive need for social connection. Like, it's part of them developing their identity for themselves. It's sort of that breaking point and splitting off from the parent and developing more independence from their parent-child relationship. And that really starts taking place in like preteens and teenage years. And so I think if, it's easy to be like, the children should stay at home and they better stay at home and to push that. But, of course, like, we all have a duty and a responsibility to one another to socially isolate and take distance right now. But at the same time, there's going to be an added pain point for teenagers, more so than pretty much any other generation, just from that human behavioral development perspective, in terms of them needing social connection to actually feel mentally well and to feel good. And so, I think it's really important to check in with your kids in that space and to also, suggest or push. Sometimes we have to jump outside of our comfort zone to initiate like a Zoom call or to call our friends more often, but check in and say, are you keeping these social connections alive in a healthy way? And there's always ways to do this. Like, you don't have to be seeing people in large groups face to face to get your social connection needs met. You can play games online, you can connect over Zoom and just talk about life and do these different fun things. But there really needs to be a space for teenagers to do that, because it's part of them developing their sense of self, their identity, and their independence.
What are some of the things that we might want to look for with our children, our teenagers, our youth, going back into these social situations? I mean, do you think that it'll be an easy transition, or what are some of the things that might come about? Because reading and doing some research, I found that, a lot of us think that once this has died down, we're just going to get back into the old swing of things. But just like with 9/11, many things changed after that situation. So what should we prepare ourselves for and our teens or our children coming out of this situation?
Yeah, I from a very sort of straightforward perspective, from like a psychological perspective, the brain has something called a homeostatic impulse, and mentally, emotionally, and obviously like your unconscious mind and how it manages the balance of your physiology, like your actual physical body, your breathing, heart rate, all these sorts of things in your autonomic nervous system. Your brain wants balance. So whenever it perceives something to be missing, it usually goes into hyper overdrive to fulfill that thing. And so if there is, like, when you sort of tune back into those 6 basic needs, like 2 of the needs that just, again, based on our wiring, that are going to be in a state of void right now or lack are, naturally, because of the circumstances, a little bit of our love and connection needs for certain people, and probably some of our certainty needs, because we're not getting to just live our lives as we're used to. And a little bit probably too of the uncertainty but novelty variety type side of that, like the exploration, because we're being confined. And so, what's probably going to take place that you're going to see is, obviously some people will still go out and be a little bit uncertain and hesitant as they, as the restrictions are lifted, sort of stage by stage. But I think what you're going to see is that people go into like a bit of overdrive to get these needs met when they start to feel safe. And so, I think we can take something positive away from that and really recognize the value that our lives have at a deeper level in terms of our needs for connection and community and cooperation with one another, and to really, build together and create together and build, healthy and sustainable relationships. So I think what you'll see is that people end up valuing these things a lot more once they've been pushed on and sort of taken away to a certain degree. And normally once the brain feels like it's equilibrated, so it's sort of gone through and gotten its needs met and filled up that bucket enough on the other side, then things will start to adjust back to normal. But I think from a psychological perspective, you'll see, yes, still some lingering fear in the uncertainty, but you'll see a lot of like immense value placed on love and connection and exploration. And I think there will be a little bit of an adjustment period from a psychological perspective.
Thais Gibson, everybody, I hope that this helps you, all the listeners out there, and that there's something positive you can definitely take away from this. I'm sure it is, because I know I'm taking away a lot of positive tips and tools that I'm going to put into my life to help others. Thais, you are also an author. So let's talk a little bit about this book, where people can get it, and then let people know where they can contact you, take lessons at your school.
Yeah, so I recently wrote a book called The Attachment Theory Guide, and it has a lot to do with like attachment traumas and basically the imprints of in our subconscious mind around our relationships. So, at a very high level, our attachment styles probably impact our relationships more than anything else, like our romantic relationships, but also our friendships, our working relationships, because we all get these programs subconsciously from childhood in the way that we're basically being taught how to relate to others. So if we get like a lot of connection and affection and consistency, we might be very secure in our attachment style. But if we get a lot of inconsistency, we might become anxious. And so, we might feel needy in our relationships or need a lot of validation or fear if somebody feels like they're pulling back or disconnecting. Instead of taking that at face value and being like, oh, somebody's having a busy day, we might feel like, oh my goodness, what's happening to the relationship, and have all of this fear, if those were painful patterns for us in our parents doing that in our early childhood. So we get all these attachment patterns in childhood, and they really translate into our adult romantic relationships and other relationships. So the Attachment Theory Guide really takes a deep dive into that and the different attachment styles. So anxious, dismissive, which are the ones that are sort of, don't like commitment a lot and tend to build walls and sort of take a step back quite a bit. And then we have our fearful avoidant, who are all the individuals who tend to be very hot and cold with people, like really connected and then really need the, space and time to pull back. And there are a tremendous amount of patterns that are really detailed about each of these types. And that's really what the book goes into. But we have a ton of free content on our YouTube channel as well that talks about different attachment styles, different types, and it's probably one of the most important things you can learn in terms of what's limiting you in all different forms of relationships. So it's something that we're really passionate about teaching and sort of exploring, because the net effects of it are very intense. And then we do a lot of the work around subconscious reprogramming in terms of how to change those patterns and change those imprints that you have, and basically observe and be able to tweak the rules that you have for relating to others so that you can have healthier and more thriving relationships.
That sounds awesome. And please tell us what your email is, your website. Let people know, because first of all, this book sounds like it's perfect for the time that we're all dealing in right now, as well as the fact of I'm seeing on social media, and I know we're talking about so much about social media, take the time out, create a book list. Find something that, to help improve yourself. And I think that Thais' book right now is one of those things you should have on the list. So Thais, again, what's the website, and if you do you want people to email you, or how will we go about asking you questions?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I want to touch on one thing you said really quickly, because it's such an important point too. Like, one thing you can do while you're stuck at home is like create a bucket list of things you want to do. It's a great time, even though certain needs are being pushed on, it's a great time to grow, to contribute, to do these other things that you can do and learn about yourself and be in relationship to yourself, right? Because you're sort of being forced to be. So the website is personaldevelopmentschool.com. And we actually have over 25 different courses on everything to do with your attachment style, attachment theory, relationships, managing anxiety, depression, discovering what your basic needs are, and then sort of the hierarchy of them within your personality. There are a ton of different courses on there that can be really supportive in your journey. And so it's personaldevelopmentschool.com, and details about the book are also available there. And you're definitely welcome to email my team at info@personaldevelopmentschool as well if you have any personal questions, or even if I'm putting out daily YouTube videos right now just to support everybody during this time as much as I possibly can. And if you want certain video content or you're interested in certain things, that's let my team know, and they pass all that information along to me as well.
Thais, thank you so much for coming back again to the show. We greatly appreciate it. everything that you've done, all the benefit of your experience and knowledge, and sharing a little bit of your story with us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the amazing work that you're also doing and supporting the community and everything that you do.
It is my pleasure, especially to sit down with people like you from around the world. You know, so our neighbor from across, I won't say across the sea because you're not across the sea. Our northern neighbor,
Toronto, Canada. Yep.
See, I can't say it totally yet, Thais, just because of the fact of how the Raptors, I don't know if you're a big basketball fan, but how the Raptors beat the Sixers for that one game. See, it's still a little bitter, just a little bit of a bitter pill. Just a little bit. But you know, we're getting accustomed to it. I'm accustomed to it now.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you, with the earbuds in their ear. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? When I was trying to get my podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and all the other places people like to listen? How do I make money from my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now Anchor can match you with great sponsors too, so you can get paid to podcasts. I like to upload my episodes directly to the app and then promote. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast, make money doing it. Go to anchor.fm/start to join me in the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. I just want to take the time out to give a special shout out to Thais Gibson for coming on to the show and giving us the benefit of her information, her experience, her education where it comes to mental health, psychology, and mindfulness practices, specifically with this topic that we're speaking of, dealing with the youth and social distancing, as well as with mental health issues as well. This is indeed a difficult time for all, as I said in the beginning of the show. We are all learning to adapt. We are all learning to deal with certain situations where it comes to the pandemic that we're facing. And we have to, in a sense, rebirth ourselves. And when I say that, I mean we have to get rid of the old and just adapt as a new individual, new skills, new ways of handling situations, new ways of handling and understanding media as a whole, to protect ourselves, to protect our minds, to protect the minds of our families, our children, and our physical selves as well. Because all of this, as we always talk and speak about on this program, is one. That 360-degree circle of fitness and health is one. Everything falls within that, and it is indeed a very, very important thing to understand where it comes to our health, that we need to continuously be working on our tools of learning in order to stay healthy, stay fit. Much like the virus itself, in a sense, we have to learn to be always evolving. It is very much important. And we have to pass that on to our children, that listen, you have to evolve. You have to keep growing. You have to keep learning so that you can always, in a sense, be prepared or stay ahead of the curve. It's that important. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon. It is that continuous growth that we are always should be attempting to achieve. And it's not just a level of, hey, I've attained enlightenment or I've attained growth. It doesn't work that way. It is always a consistent, constant journey. One thing that I think about when it comes to things of this nature is the fact of perfection. I know many of you have heard me say this time after time, but I'm going to continuously say it because it needs to be said, and we are taught a major dysfunction when it comes to perfection. Perfection, where it comes to humanity, is not the absence of error. It is the acceptance and the thankfulness that we have errors, and we have the ability to adapt to those errors, to correct those errors, and to grow stronger from those errors, to learn and to pass that learning knowledge that we have obtained within our experience and pass it on to others so that they don't have to necessarily deal with the same thing that we have. They have the benefit of our experience. They have the benefit of our history, and to use that as an education, as a map, a roadmap throughout life. That is what is so important. And once we realize the fact that we have that ability to continuously keep growing, because when you're not growing, when you're not changing, you're stagnant. Everything grows. Everything grows. Even amazingly, even stagnation is a form of growth. It just might be growth in another direction. It's not a form of growth that I particularly, as a human being, as a person, want to continue. I want to grow in a positive way. I want to continue to learn. I want to continue to get better. And this is something that I think all of us should strive for, to learn and get better. And if you're not growing, what are you doing? What are you doing? Stagnation. If you're not growing, you're stagnant, and stagnation leads to death. So with that being said, we should all remember that growth is the eternal journey of humankind. Learning, physical growth, mental growth, spiritual growth, financial growth, all growth. Doesn't mean that it has to be done in a negative. You can grow in very positive ways. So we need to practice this mindfulness of growth and pass these tools down to our children and our teens so that they can take that to a whole other level. I'm thinking about something when I was younger. I used to watch my father bench press, in our basement, and I always wanted to be strong like him, because like most sons are with their fathers, you look up to your father and you're like, wow, my father was 190-pound strong guy, 5'11", but very strong, very powerful. And I used to watch him all the time. I said, I want to be like that. I'm gonna be strong. And I got older and I could bench, and I was like, yeah, and I the only thing is I'm not as heavy as he was. He was 190. I'm 100, at my max 180. So with that being said, but I'm able to bench more than he was able to bench. So, just to say about that growth, he passed that love down to me and that education down to me, and I was able to enhance it and learn more about it, and I'll pass that down to my future children. So that's the way it should be. So I hope that everybody had a great time, was able to take positive lessons away from this broadcast that they can use and share with others. I thank everybody so much for tuning in. Remember, if you like what you hear on the podcast, if you are thinking to yourself, man, they're dropping some wonderful jewels, be a friend. Sharing is caring, and we love when people share the podcast. Also, if you like the episodes, if you like the information that we have here on the De La Fit podcast, then do us a solid. Subscribe allows you, the listener, to get notifications of when new episodes are posted. And we want you to get those new episodes because we want your feedback. We want to know what you think. And we know that you, the listeners who have been with us for so long and sticking with us, we know you want to know when new episodes are coming out and when new things are coming out. So do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Like, follow, share. For those of you who are social media gurus, we are on every social media platform. We are on Instagram. We are on Facebook. We are on Twitter. If you're looking for us on Twitter, it is at De La Fit Podcast. If you're looking for us on Facebook, it is at De La Fit Podcast. If you're looking for us on the gram, it is DE_LA_Fit Podcast. Also, we have a website, which is www.delafitpodcast. And if you ever want to contact us, if you ever want to ask us questions, if you want to have a question answered, if you're like, man, I love that last guest that you had, or Tayez dropped some jewels, but I want to ask her this question, send us an email at dela13@gmail.com. We will answer. We will always answer. Thank you so much. I hope that all of you enjoyed this broadcast today. I hope that you have a happy, healthy weekend and a better week to come. Please take care of yourselves. And I know if you take care of yourself the right way, the balanced way, the proper way, that you're going to take care of not only yourself, you're going to take care of others the right way too. All right. Be safe. Peace.
You've been listening to the DelaFit podcast. Ta-ta for now.